Welcome to The Law Matters. Of course it does. Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator. This program has been created, as we tell you, to educate, inform, and help you with the law matters because the law matters. Understand the law better, and you're in a better position to understand how to protect yourself, your family, and your business. In each segment, we provide information and resources that will help you decide whether or not you actually need to contact a lawyer. You may decide that you can handle some issues yourself. If you do decide to reach out and contact professional counsel, they'll be better prepared, you'll be better prepared. Our goal, of course, is to help you achieve the best possible results while saving time and money. As always, the Bazaar & Associates law firm in East Providence continues to help us with each of the topics that we tackle, and we want to welcome Attorney David Bazaar.
Thank you, Deb.
So today we're going to talk about fraud and scams. By August of 2020, Reuters had reported that U.S. losses related to coronavirus alone, fraud alone, had reached $100 million, with a large swath of those cases being identity theft. So between stolen identification, Social Security, stimulus checks, the PPP loans, phony vaccines, and product liability, there were just a host of fraudsters out to get you. So we know we spent a lot of time at home and online during most of 2020, and it gave criminals so many opportunities. So today we want to help you find out what to do if you've been victimized and hopefully help you avoid some scams. They continue. So a lot of people who were receiving stimulus checks or unemployment benefits, they found out only when they tried to collect that they've been victimized. What should one do?
So actually, I think there's a rampant problem with unemployment applications that people are filing in other people's names. And I am aware of many of those employees that I know, companies that I know who receive notification that their employees are collecting unemployment when they're sitting at their desk, and we know they're not doing it. And it is just a major problem, really bad. And I'm not a proponent of the death penalty, but I'll tell you, whoever's doing this type of stuff, that might be an exception. So here's what happens. It comes in, you get a notice, assuming you get a notice that you've applied for unemployment, and you know you haven't. So there's a Massachusetts and Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training. You contact them, and usually they'll tell you to do this online, which also worries me a bit. But you do it online, and you get a notification of where you can send them an email and explain to them that you're a victim of fraud. And there's so much of it going on, I think they're used to receiving these. Now, I know of a company, a client, who had this happen to an employee, and so they got notice and the employee got notice. Both the employee and the company sent notice to the Department of Labor and Training that it was a fraud and it shouldn't be honored. And then 6 months later or 4 months later, whatever it is, the company got notice that the employee was paid their unemployment. So again, you go on and you can protest it as the employer.
As the employer, you said?
As
not
the employer,
okay.
Because you have the right for someone who's quit or left your employment that you shouldn't be paying, because as an employer you are taxed on a number of people that are laid off and collecting unemployment, so you can protest it. So when you go on to do that, not only do you find the link to do the protest, which you would send in and say, this is a fraud, but you can also do another link, which is identity theft, and file the same thing in that. And so that's the first step. The employee should also contact the police department and let them know that they've been the victim of identity theft, and probably the credit bureaus, or at least a credit bureau, to get a copy of their credit report to see what else is on there and report it through that system as well.
I want to get into the credit side of that in a little bit, but while we're still talking about unemployment and on the other side of it, Social Security benefits, people have been able to latch onto the PII, the personal identification information, and so here your Social Security is now compromised. Now it's not the Department of Labor and Training or whatever, now it's Social Security. how do you attack or approach or handle that? I recall when I was a child, seems like a very long time ago, we were told never to give out your social security number ever, ever, ever. Now it seems that every credit card company and every app that I have seems to have it, and then asks me to verify my social security number because they have it anyway. Yeah. What happens with Social Security now? This is another scam.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
It's sort of an interesting thing. And when they call and you call them and they say, okay, well, please confirm, sometimes it's the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. When they ask for the last 5 digits of your Social Security number, that's a bit of a challenge. Try
Why?
to do that sometime.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So you're always tempted, except if you're the one who called them and you're trying to get some account information, to say, no, I don't want to give that to you. But certain circumstances, at least the last 4, I think you have to so they can identify you. If you've called them and you're trying to get the information you're trying to get. But I understand the hesitancy to give any information out. But it depends. If someone called you, I would never give it out.
Of course not.
In fact, I'm tempted to say, you tell me and I'll tell you if you're right. But of course, they're not going to do that.
Well, what do you do, for example, even a store, if you didn't happen to carry the card with you? It's not just now your license. Sometimes they'll say, put in your Social Security, or even if they say the last 4, because it means they've already had the whole entire set of digits.
Right.
The fact that a store could have my Social Security number, and I gave it to them, or else I didn't get a card. What do you do once it's been compromised like that? I can just see that causes a wave across every credit card that you ever had if someone's gotten into your Social Security.
You've slid into a little bit of a different discussion. You
Yes.
had started talking about
That's
Social
right.
Security.
Yes, let's stay with
But Social Security numbers,
Yes.
obviously, if that's been compromised and it's a credit situation, it's the credit bureaus and all of those types of things that you would want to go through, including, again, I would report it as identity theft to the police, and they'll give you more information as to where to go. I haven't had to do that, thankfully, so I don't know exactly what they'll tell you, but that's where I would start. And I think with the unemployment, it was the state police they actually wanted you to call. I'm not sure if it's a credit theft and identity theft where someone's got your number and is opening credit cards, whether that would be a local police where you live, that type of thing. But whoever you call, I'm sure they've got enough of them. They'll be well prepared to tell you who to turn to next. The Social Security issue, where now your Social Security has been compromised, that's something where you need to deal with the Social Security agency.
And so, time was once that if you carried your Social Security number in your wallet and it was stolen, in your pocketbook, purse, and it was stolen, that was certainly time to make sure that you circumvent that, make sure that it hasn't been compromised or used. And there are a host of things that we know that they can use that Social Security for. Now it's also things that are, as we were just talking about, that are done online, where someone might have taken through email or an unsecured online website that you were buying things. So there are many more opportunities for people to lift that Social Security number and wreak havoc.
There are so many different ways that the people who I do not like are doing this. And I think you can tell how personally it affects me, and I'm angry about what they're doing.
Yes.
But they just have so many different ways of getting at your information, whether it's through the internet and buying something online, or through a company that you've dealt with who's been hacked, or they hack you directly, or you've been in a hospital and your information's in the hospital and it gets stolen from the hospital. I know about that situation.
And what do you do? I mean, in some cases, they won't give you the information that is about you because you've been hacked.
Yeah, so it's extremely frustrating. And what can you do? Well, no matter how they got your information, whether it was from your stay in the hospital, your purchase on the internet, you're swiping a card somewhere where there's some kind of reader or tracker that steals that information, however you've been hacked and your information is being used, your response is dependent on how it's being used. So if it's being used to apply for unemployment, you take the steps we've already talked about. If it's being used to affect your Social Security, it's the Social Security Administration, as we talked about. And if it's about your credit, and your identity, then it's credit bureaus and the police and all of that. And interestingly enough, the jurisdiction on that crime falls to the United States Treasury and the Secret Service.
Interesting. So, and when we say that we're interested in providing some resources, apparently this is so rampant, there's been a special website, identitytheft.gov, to report identity theft and get a recovery plan in place. Because people at Social Security, especially during COVID, there's nobody home.
Right.
We tried to use the telephone numbers that they list, and they list several. And no one is answering, or if they answer, you're online and on the phone line and on hold for an interminable amount of time.
I wonder if you can even do it the way I always like to do things, face-to-face and in person. I'm not sure you could even get an appointment right now, but if you asked me, under normal circumstances, I have a problem with Social Security, what's the best way to deal with it? For me, my way to want to deal with something like that would be to make an appointment, go in person, and talk to someone at the Social Security agency, which I know the address of, and I've driven there, and I know who I'm talking to.
And so, again, with the Social Security issue, David, if someone finds, I'm filing early for my IRS tax refund, and they say, oh, you already have it. Bingo, you know that there's already another problem. What should someone do in that case? Should they be contacting Social Security first, IRS, accountant?
You moved to the IRS now.
Yes.
So Internal Revenue Service, Treasury Department, whatever it is, someone's already filed and collected your refund, thank you very much, maybe your stimulus check too, if you're entitled to that. It's an IRS issue, and I always like to defer to accountants on the best way to deal with that, but if there's a way, and I have not run into this situation yet, but I would assume the starting place would be on the IRS website to find out what do I do if someone's filed under my Social Security number.
Wouldn't it have been nice if they had tried to do that and instead they owed money?
Yeah.
Instead of getting the refund.
As long as they sent the check in, I think that would be okay. But if they file and you owe money, thank you very much.
So back to the situation with COVID and fraud. Apparently, on the medical side of this, the stolen personal identification numbers have also been a catalyst for fraud when the contact tracing text messages were coming, because people were supposed to be receiving text messages if they had some degree of exposure. You have, gee, David, you shouldn't be doing things, quarantining. But if you have a hacker and someone clicks on it, you don't know right away that it's been a hack. And instead, there are links on that text that then installs malware and gets to your other personal information on your phone. What do you do about that?
So first thing I do is any text message I get that I don't recognize, I delete it. And
how would you recognize a contact tracing? It says, hi, we're contact tracing. How would you know? It's not something you know.
Because my experience with contact tracing has been they call you. They don't text you.
Good for everyone to know.
And so I get a call, and even then I can be somewhat suspicious, but actually I know where it's coming from and what the background is and why they're calling, and I'll listen and I'll thank them for calling. And I won't give them any personal information, but I will answer a question, perhaps, if I'm pretty confident it's someone calling about contact tracing, which is, were you at such and such a restaurant or wherever it might be coming from? I'll answer that because, you know, that's not really a big secret. Do you want my Social Security number? No, I'm not giving you that. Do you want to know how I'm feeling? Well, thanks for asking. I'm feeling fine. And if I need to quarantine, give me the information and tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'm not going to tell you things about me.
So with this identity theft, and it's affecting your insurance, your medical coverage, it's one thing to call all of the credit bureaus. Does this also mean that we have to contact our doctors and lawyers and whoever else has things that are in vaults or online portals where our medical information is stored, and now if I wanted to check on my medical information, I can't because someone else already has done something and altered it? How far and how deep does this go, and what should we do?
Well, I don't think, for example, if your identity's been taken and used for other things such as credit card applications or other fraudulent things, that it's really necessary to call your doctor and say, hey, I've been hacked, protect my medical records, because they're trying to protect your records and everybody else's anyway. So it's not going to change anything they're going to do. Same thing for your attorneys. We have websites or cloud-based software or whatever it is we use that theoretically, and I don't know much about technology, has all of this built-in redundancy and protection and all of that type of thing. So it's not going to change what the attorney or the doctor or the accountant is going to do, because they're already taking all the steps they need to take and can take to protect you. It's good to let your attorney know, so, or you know, if you've got a doctor who's going to practice where they deal with other people for you, don't give information to somebody because it might not be who they're purported to be. That, if you're worried about that, might be something to do. But for the most part, it's really worried. What I would be most concerned about is people using my identity to get things in my name that I'll either be responsible for or will affect my credit.
So if someone has hacked into your computer and taken your personal identification information, and you have online financial planning or stock trading, it seems like all of those are going to be, should be on fraud alert and be contacted immediately as well.
Those are different. Yes, that's different. And so
everyone asks all of these things, so let's see how many we can tick off.
So that type of thing, the first thing you're going to want to do is change all of your passwords. Because if they got into one thing, they're going to get into another thing. And a lot of people use similar passwords or the same password or whatever. And they may have gotten to something, if you have it, that has your passwords. So change all your passwords. And then, yes, if you have an account with Fidelity or Merrill Lynch or UBS, do I have to name them all so I don't leave anybody out? You want to notify whoever your account is with to make sure that they understand that you've been compromised, and just to be aware of it. Again, I don't think they're going to change anything. It doesn't mean they're going to sell all your Apple stock to protect you. That's not, the decision wouldn't be made based on that. It would be based on your finances and your taxes and so forth. But they might want to know that so that they can be aware of any trade orders that might come in, or requests for checks, or whatever it is that you might normally do with a financial institution. So yes, that I would notify.
And while I was mentioning all of this minutia, one of the other interesting things is if you've had that PII breached, even on your social media accounts, and perhaps even more so on your social media accounts, that has been a way for someone to find their way in, and it's almost impossible to talk to anybody at Facebook. Hello, Mr. Facebook and Mr. Zuckerberg is not happening. And of course, they go through even more to freeze every account and everything that you wanted to do to acquire your personal videos and photos and everything else. So those things can become very complicated and something for people to watch out for as well.
Yeah, and so I don't do a lot of social media. I'm old, but my daughters do. And so I'd be much more comfortable that they would know exactly what they have to do with social media, or my son, but not me.
Suffice it to say, even if you do know, however you've been hacked, social media or conventional means, it is cumbersome, it is arduous to get through all that. It's time-consuming, it's such a pain. Yeah. Would you be doing that for me, David, if I needed that as a lawyer? Would you be likely to ever go through all of that for a client?
I think depending on the extent of the damage that's been done to somebody, you might want to hire an attorney to help you with some of those things, especially when it's credit related and you're having a hard time recovering your identity and eliminating the things that don't belong on your credit report and that type of thing. So as part of that, that's something an attorney might be able to help you with. But again, I understand the frustration with that because they're so difficult on these online entities to be able to deal directly with a person that can give you advice and fix something for you at the companies.
That's awful. Earlier on, when we started talking about coronavirus, David, we talked about vaccines and the development of it, we were talking about it in the context of product liability, and I think we discovered, at least at the time, that the leading manufacturers who were doing the research and development had blanket end-to-end immunity, so that they could never be sued, whether it was at their lab down to whoever's administering the drug and everything in the supply chain. Well, not surprisingly, the vaccine's been out for a while, and there's also fraud there, where apparently, as we see here, there have been people who said that they have both the testing equipment and also have found other ways to get you a vaccine faster than waiting in the conventional line. Apparently, these viricides, or whatever they're doing, so many different ways that people are being scammed, whether it's get your virus here and now and you won't have to wait.
Vaccine, probably.
Yes, sorry, get your vaccine. And also you can get your testing kits. What, do you think that product liability, as it has been before, blanket immunity, will that continue under these circumstances?
Well, it won't extend to those things.
Frauds.
Yeah, because first of all, it's not legitimate. And the only immunity extends to legitimate corporations or operations or things that are definitely being done to help eliminate the pandemic. So anything that's fraudulent won't have immunity. The problem is the ghost that you'll be chasing probably doesn't have any assets.
Yes, and of course, so the reason when I pose this question to you, it's because I've been reading that this is going to, people don't know what to do and have no recourse. If they had a testing kit that was a fraud, you understand that for them it means that they may have been infected, spread the infection, and that's an issue. And those who had said that they made a vaccine that was helpful and it really wasn't,
right.
Again, more damage that's beyond dollars and cents.
Right.
But back to dollars and cents, let's talk about business for a little bit. The wonderful PPP loans was a great way to be able to help bail out some businesses. You know that there's going to be somebody, you read all the time that there is someone who's going to be scamming that. One example, a case in company owner in Florida, I'm quoting here, $4 million in loans that they were managed to secure, and an investigation revealed that their average monthly expenses were $200,000. So it seems like that's certainly prosecute worthy. Apparently, this is so widespread that companies are so overrun with, applications right now, they've given up on these applicants' claims. What's going to happen with the PP loan abuse?
That'll come out over time and be investigated, and people will be held accountable. That's much more likely to happen than you finding the person who hacked your identity.
You think that's more likely?
That's more likely to happen. And some of it is going to be legitimately fraudulent and prosecutable, and some of it may be a mistake or something that happened along the way, and there might be a repayment that's required, but that'll be investigated.
Let's finish up on that a little bit, or follow up on that a little bit more, David. So many people had anticipated that their need would be for X amount, and actually they didn't need it, or the circumstances changed. How do you avoid, if you want to do the right thing, how do you avoid having the fallout of that? Do you contact the bank from whence it came? What's the proper procedure?
If you borrow the money and you used it for what you were supposed to use it for, then you're following the right procedure. There's nothing you have to do other than file for the forgiveness. If you borrowed the money and then didn't need it because you couldn't use it for what you borrowed it for, which was mostly for payroll, because you no longer had any employees, then you owe the money back, and you should, when you contact the bank at the end of the day, you say, yeah, I owe it back to you. I didn't use it for what I borrowed it for.
And that's the right way to be ahead of that, so that you're less likely, if they do finally prosecute, even if it takes a while, considering there are so many.
It wouldn't be something that would be something to be prosecuted for, because you borrowed it. If you used it, then fine, and if you didn't, you're returning it,
right,
or paying it back.
But if you didn't return it and you thought there's some free money,
right,
then there are some problems.
Right.
So when people have had these, back on the issue about doing things as best you can to clarify clear your credit and get a new social security number and all the rest. There's so many different things that may continue.
Do you get a new social security number?
That's one of the questions. Some people were asking, should we get a social security number? And apparently that is one of the last things that you'd want to do, because so much of your history is then erased, and every payment that you've ever made anywhere. Would you agree that that's the last thing that you want to do if you're in trouble?
I don't even know anything about being able to get a new social security number, but I would say, I want to sit right across from that Social Security representative and say, is all of my earning history going to get transferred to my new number? And everything else that I've done through my original number get transferred to the new number? So I have a new number, but my history is the same? Because that sounds like a very difficult situation, unless they said, no, this is how we're fixing these problems now, and I don't know that.
So I had done some research about this, because they said that many were so exasperated and had done everything that Social Security Administration had told them to do, and they still couldn't get it cleared up, and it was still affecting their applications for credit, their ability to collect. The information was wrong, and so they just said, this is terrible. Can we just put a finger in the dike? Can we just stop this right now and start all over? And the first thing was Social Security advice was, let's go back and see if we can avoid that. But I guess this has gone on so far and so long that there are some people who actually do want to do it. They do caution that that's the last thing that you'd want to do.
Right, I would assume so. And again, if I did it, I want to make sure my earning history and everything else that my retirement is going to be based on gets carried forward.
That could certainly be fraud. And the other question that was back, one more issue about the credit card and your credit being stolen, and now people are racking up charges. Even if you have contacted your credit company, there was a question about what the better thing to do is, whether you do a credit freeze, or do you just extend what they call a fraud alert after you start trying to erase the troubles. Pros and cons of each. Do you think that it does harm if you put a credit freeze? I understand that keeps you from able to get any other access to credit reports for a long time. What's your thought about that, David?
Not only that, again, you need to speak to a credit expert on this, but my concern about just a straight credit freeze is that, well, I want to buy a new car. So they run your credit and it says, oh, credit frozen. Doesn't say why or whatever, I'm sure, but how are you getting that new car? So it really depends on where you are and what stage of life you are, and whether you need credit, even though you don't think you do a lot of times. And you might say, well, I paid off my mortgage, I don't have any credit card debt, and I don't intend to buy a new car or boat or whatever, but you do, and you might, and so I'm not sure. A credit freeze, maybe if it's temporary until something's fixed, is okay, but I don't think that's a long-term solution.
Sounds right, and the extended fraud alert is an option. We hope that this has been helpful to you. We hope that you don't suffer any of these issues. We thank you for tuning in to The Law Matters. As we say, it matters to you.